Welcome everyone. I hope you like the video and subscribe the channel for more content. Let's start the video. Chapter 1, Morning Glories. The beginning. Luffy has always loved the sea. He always will. It sang to him, whispered in his ear, loved him back in the way only the sea could, and it made Luffy feel complete, whole. Not so lonely anymore. Seashells and seaweed, pretty crabs and ocean jewels, beautiful horizons and stories from the depths were his gifts from this unknowing force, and 7. Luffy did not question it, only accepted the sea and all of its love. Then Shanks sails into port waving the black flag of freedom above his head. Then Shanks sails into port, bearing gifts like the sea, but the sea isn't mad, no, because Shanks is its gift to Luffy, a dream. Then Shanks sails into port bearing a dark treasure in his hull, and nothing is the same when Luffy bites into the gum-gum. Fruit, flowers bloom in his lungs, swallowing him whole. He coughs up petals, a rainbow of color, feels them scratch against his throat, never ending and never leaving. Morning glories, scattering across the floor of the bar, white and blood-spotted. An omen. A threat. A fate. Shanks panics when Luffy coughs up those flowers, panics when the sea gets rougher and tears well up in Luffy's eyes. Panics when blood, so much blood already, drips onto the ground. Hanahaki, Shanks whispers, just like the legends, and it's a guillotine over Luffy's neck. They, the villagers, the pirates, the bandits, wonder who this child could love so completely and not be loved back. Luffy is loved by everyone in this village, and by Garp across the sea, and by an unknown father who Luffy might not get to know. This boy has so much love, draws people to him like a flame, is the sun in a child's body. Who could Luffy choose to love, not love him back? They wonder and beg on their knees for Luffy to tell them, but Luffy doesn't. Only stares at the sea, and lets white and red petals fall from his mouth. The sea hates devil fruit users. And sometimes, there are no exceptions to the rule. Chapter 2, Sea Pinks. Zoro asks the boy in dinghy who he loves so much so that the petals that fall from his mouth are tipped in red. Luffy laughs, and carries on, a trail of bright sea pink blossoms drifting in the sea behind him. Zoro thinks he will never know, and settles back, catching Luffy when a coughing fit sends him nearly to the ground, faltering in his footsteps. Everything is worse after Luffy falls in the water. He coughs more, stumbles more, sleeps more. It's so obvious. Zoro notices after 2.5 days of being with him. The people they meet say it's just water in the lungs, stirring up those plants, but Zoro knows why plants grow, and if Luffy is like the sun incarnate, then who is to say the saltwater hatred does not act as a nurturer? Sun and water make life. After all, even now, Zoro knows that Luffy has a way of turning the world on its head. It's no surprise he turns life into flowery death. He was like this when he wandered into that dusty courtyard. Impossibly strong as Zoro, stronger even, yet halting and falling backwards into Zoro's or Kabi's arms, flowers coming out like words. The red of his vest was to cover the blood that spilled from his lips when he laughed too long. Luffy still laughed. Shishishi, like petals in the waves. He had stolen Zoro in that courtyard, along with his swords and his loyalty. There was an oath sworn between bloody breaths, Zoro swearing death to the man who would dare stand in the way of his dreams. He knows he won't have to kill Luffy. Luffy's already dying. Chapter 3, Milk Veg. Nami did not realize what the boy had, at first, until they are in the dinghy and away from Buggy, until Luffy laughs, until she shakes him and flowers pour out of his mouth like a waterfall. Milk vetches, this time, mixed with sunflowers. She wonders how they even fit in his mouth. Luffy laughs at her, this small child with bloody lips laughing at her shocked face, and she hits the 14-year-old over the head. What the fuck, kid? She says, and Luffy keeps laughing. What the fuck? He still laughs, but she'll be the one to rub his back when he can't stop coughing, when he looks too sad at the sea, and she'll be the one to bring him tangerine slices far later, to give some fruit in his mouth that he won't cough up later. She worries, sometimes, about who could possibly hate Luffy. Hanahaki. She wonders, when Luffy rests his head on her shoulders with Arlong's blood on his knuckles. Of course, the only thing that could bring her captain, isn't that wonderful? She's so happy when she says that word, bring her captain down, is her captain himself. She loves her captain who calls her his and doesn't make her feel horrible when he does. He doesn't have long out on these seas, because of his own heart, and that means he doesn't have long to reach his dream. Nami's his navigator, the best navigator on any sea. She will wrangle the winds to her command to get him to the end of the sea before his time runs out. This she swears, even as she curses Luffy out and bans him from the kitchen, and is the only voice of reason on this ship. Chapter 4, Daffodils. Usopp knows the tales, long-lost lovers, lovers torn apart, lovers who had hatred grow in their hearts, knows it all and recites it by spirit to his followers. Did you hear how the king choked on gold roses? Did you know that flowers grow because no one loved the earth back? Did you know? Still, he'd never think he see the effects of Hanahaki, unrequited love, deep in the soul, felt so intensely that the heart could not help but grow flowers to gain favor, in real life. The doctors said his mother died only of a coughing fit, no flowers in her lungs or vines in her veins. Usopp found white and yellow daffodils by the door and never knew his father, so he can't really say if the doctors were right or not. Usopp always believed the lies people told him when he was a kid. Now, he tells them. Now, he knows the lies the doctor said. Luffy, knocking down enemies with only a punch, leaves flowers in his wake. Usopp doesn't get it, and prays he never will, because Luffy is smaller and younger than he is and so vibrant despite the living plant in his chest. He loves, fiercely, and Usopp already loves him for it. He invites Usopp out to sea, there's adventure waiting. Luffy says, eyes bright, we can't miss it. So get on already. Usopp gets on, starting the adventure of a lifetime, and tries not to wonder why Luffy is in such a rush to get out to sea. Later, he sees him sitting down for an hour, after the floor is covered in daffodils and water willows and blood, and thinks he knows. Chapter 5, Saltwater. Sanji, medically, cannot get Hanahaki. Something about his bastard ex-father and his schemes, Sanji wasn't really paying attention. All he knows is that while he doesn't have anything the rest of his shitty ex-siblings have, he does definitely have immunity. He would have gotten it by now if he didn't, so many beautiful ladies. That's not true. It wouldn't have been the ladies that stole his heart, not now and not before. Sanji loved his father in the way all children do. Judge didn't love him back. Not one bit. Still, he knows the best way to treat Hanahaki, stifle the effects of mythic flower growing in the lungs. A spice here, lots of salt there, some of this and that, a brew to be slurped down and refilled for as long as it takes. Any good chef knows nutritional health, knows exactly what people need to eat. Sanji is among the best. Of course, he knows. The minute the boy walks through the door, throws a cannonball through it, really, Sanji serves him a brew and some meat and ignores the fact that the boy is getting bloody flower petals over the dirty dishes. They'll be cleaned by someone else later. Instead he serves the meal and watches the boy defeat a tyrant while choking on his own love, and wonders what brought a dying kid out to sea. In truth, the All Blue stole Sanji's heart, hidden out there in the world, a dream, a hope, a love. Sanji doesn't have the devil's fruit in his veins though. Sanji is free, and the ocean loves him back. Chapter 6, Camellias. Vivi loves this crew, this Straw Hat crew. They are so joyous, in every moment, even when they are facing down enemies. It's a game to them, but it's a game they can win. She would be worried, if not for the way Nami can reign in a storm with one weapon or the way Zoro can cut down an entire town. They are stronger than anyone Vivi knows, strong enough to defeat warlord and tyrants and maybe even gods someday. And, more than anything else, they care. Care for each other, care for this ship, care for Vivi and her kingdom and her plea, and care for Luffy. Luffy, who laughs and wipes blood away from his lips but who still has red stuck to his teeth and camellia petals in his mouth. Luffy, who loves so infinitely he found the one person who could not love him back. Luffy, who looks to the ocean and coughs and coughs. He's 14, younger than her, younger than most of this crew and already fading, but he brings them all along anyway. She'll make the adventure good for him, they all will. She watches, sometimes, as Nami rubs Luffy's back and gives him tangerines, as Sanji sits and helps Luffy drink warm broths and sweet liquids when he's coughed for far too long, as Usopp will tell him a story and let Luffy lean tiredly against his shoulder, and not budge when blood goes drip, drip, drip onto Mary's decks. She'll watch as Zoro will remain so close to the railing when Luffy is fishing, and not let him fall, a protective guard dog, watching out for evil ocean sprays. She will watch as they will let Luffy sleep in, if he's been up at night coughing, and how Luffy always has two pairs of watchful eyes on him when he's at the helm. She watches herself, then, brushing petals off the deck, proof of Luffy's overwhelming love for the sea, and watches herself curse the waves at night, when Luffy played in the ocean that day on some stranger's shore and had to be carried back to the Mary. Vivi loves the ocean, too, you know. All who sail the seas do, in some manner. She can't ask Luffy to stop loving the blue waters, but she can curse the ocean to stop hating her captain. Luffy pulls her forward, to an island of dinosaurs, and Vivi knows she would follow him anywhere, if he asked. He wouldn't, is the thing, and it makes her love him that much more. Chapter 7, Globe Amaranth. Chopper is a reindeer, and reindeer never really belonged to the sea anyway. It doesn't bother him, being hated by the sea, because he never really loved it in the first place. It was always an escape, a distant destination, a flag over his head. Not a love, not like he loved the doctor, or doctrine, or his new crew. No, not a love at all. In fact, as he takes his captain into the cabin for his first checkup, it's becoming more like a hate instead. Chopper never took an oath never to hurt anybody. Doctrine liked using his antlers as anesthesia too much for that, and Chopper wanted to be a pirate someday. Pirates fought. Pirates hurt people, maliciously or otherwise. But never did Chopper think he might be drawn to hatred for someone other than Wapol. Luffy's chest flutters weakly beneath his hooves, heartbeat skipping in a way that's only possible, only able to keep him alive, because Chopper's captain is made of rubber. There's blood on his lips constantly and a persistent cough echoing after his laughter. He stumbles, sometimes, and gets fatigued at odd times, a shadow of death following in every footstep. Chopper hates that he's gotten used to it already. His new captain is younger than he is, small and tiny, and it's so weird to see someone with so much authority be so young. Still, none of the crew questions his leadership. What could Luffy, the man who saved Chopper, the man who saved Drum, the man who waved a flag not his own but with the same fierceness in his eyes, the man who will be king of the pirates, be but captain? Luffy smiles at him, then, again, when Chopper hesitates far too long on his chest and that stifling, growing feeling hiding within it. He's only dealt with Hanahaki once before, a persistent case that is. Usually the love fades with the flowers and the realization that their love does not love them back. This case was different. An old woman who refused to stop loving her child that scorned her and burned her house down in the depths of winter. She died, the night Doctrine and Chopper found her. Her deathbed covered in beautiful immortal globe amaranths. Chopper will burn the world before he lets that happen to his captain. Chopper. Luffy prompts, bright-eyed and curious. Sorry Luffy. Chopper says and tries to move on to the rest of his examination when Luffy grabs his hands. They're warm. His captain isn't dead yet. Chopper, he says, like a king to his most loyal knight. It's okay. The tears well up in Chopper's eyes anyway. But Dash, you'll die, maybe in the next 3 years, if we're not careful, the next 5 if we're lucky. You'll die and I just met you, and that too short a time to love you as my captain, my friend, my savior. It's okay. Luffy says again, forcefully, that smile never leaving his face. That's why I set out, you know, so I could be pirate. King? I had to set out now, I couldn't later. If I die trying on the path to my dream, then everything's okay. That's what being a pirate is, chasing your dream? Shishishi. King or dead, echoes in Chopper's brain. King or dead. Still, Chopper doesn't say any more about it, only finishes his examination, giving Luffy a set of drinks to ask from Sanji, juices and a smoothie with every meal, stuff Luffy's metabolism will devour in an instant, and strict directions to get Chopper if he falls in the ocean, then sends him on his way. When Luffy bounces out the door, Chopper's dream has shifted, becoming laser-focused and direct. Chopper is going to cure every illness in the world. Hanahaki will be the first, and he will do it soon. The Pirate King can't die before his coronation, after all. No matter how much the ocean hates him. Chapter 8, Roses and Plum Flowers. Ace didn't expect to see Luffy in Alabasta, didn't expect to see him at all, because Luffy was supposed to be at home at dawn for the next 3 years. Instead, a newspaper flutters down from a news coup that morning, heralding the bounty of Monkey D. Luffy, and Ace burst into flames. Ace used to love the sea, really, he did. It wasn't a love like Luffy's. But it was a love all the same, and looking back, maybe it was freedom he loved more than anything else. The chance for an answer, hanging over the horizon. Then, he met Luffy, who choked on his own breath and smiled so brightly at the thing that hated him, and Ace found he really didn't care that much for the sea after all. Because Ace didn't love much. He loved Luffy, and Sabo, and his mother, and Makino, and though he would never admit it, Gramps and the bandits too. The rest of the world hated him, and yet, no flowers ever bloomed in his lungs. Ace was always loved back. Luffy wasn't. And it hurt. Deuce had to calm him down, slap him over the head, yell at him, before Ace started making any sense again. When he did, they set out for the next island on the log pose immediately. They couldn't go back. Ace was the captain, the star rookie. Though Luffy had a starter bounty higher than him, what the fuck did he do? And he would not let his crew's dreams die just because Luffy was an idiot. So they went forward and arrived in Alabasta after being swept off course by a storm so horrific even the Grand Line residents of the Spades were in awe of it. Privately, later, Ace remembers a secret about a dragon, and knows it wasn't really a storm at all. Or at least, not one made of cloud and thunder, but flesh and bone and the letter D. In Alabasta, the same day he saw the wanted poster with rage still coursing through his veins at the stupidity of his little brother, Ace sees Luffy, unexpectedly, and out of the blue, laughing, bright and joyous, and choking in the same breath. Just the same as when Ace left Dawn, with maybe fuller cheeks and more sea-swept hair. 14, and so stupid. Ace saves him from the marine, and doesn't quite shake him in the next moment, but it's a close thing. Luffy. Ace growls. Ace. Luffy cheers. And well, that is that before Ace slings Luffy over his shoulder as a volley of bullets follow in their wake. What the hell are you doing out here, you idiot? 17? We promised. Shishishi. Luffy laughs, a few bright orange petals drifting out from the hand covering his mouth. I couldn't wait. Ace snorts at that. It's been 5 months, Luffy. Did you even set off at your birthday? Yep. Snuck out too. I stole Old Man Johnson's boat. Shishishi. Ace remembers Garp walking up to the bandit hut with whining brat with blood on his cheek. Luffy, he had introduced the kid to Dodon. Take care of him for me? Keep him away from the water. The rest of them had thought it was because of his devil fruit. It wasn't till Makino visited and explained Luffy's love, the way he looked out to the horizon and its foamy waters, that they understood. They didn't like to let him out after that. Why accelerate his death, after all? Ace snorts again, a familiar smile creeping its way across his face at his brother's antics. Yeah. Do you even have a crew? It's a good question to ask. Luffy is nothing but a miracle worker, even as blood drips from the petals in his mouth. He would be able to make it to the Grand Line on sheer luck, but, of course, Luffy knows the importance of a good crew, and a ship, and a dock, and a princess, and Ace finally laughs, full-heartedly, at his little brother, because Luffy isn't dying as he thought, isn't rushing out to sea in a panic because the last sets of Hanahaki are setting in, and maybe the sea might be killing his little brother a little bit more every time he touches sea stone or dips his toes in salt water, but Luffy is alive. And both of them will live. Without regrets. If Luffy doesn't regret setting out to sea and letting flowers rot in his chest like an omen of death, then Ace cannot regret it either. Ace rarely loves, but he has always been loved back. Luffy loves so much yet it kills him, day by day. Ace holds his brother in his arms, for the last time? He hopes not, and hands him his Beaver card. If you need to find me, he says, we'll meet at the Pirates Summit. The top, when both of them are big names with bigger bounties, sometime in the future. Luffy broke one promise to Ace and left early. Ace will make sure he doesn't die before he breaks another. Don't be stupid, Ace had told Luffy on that cliffside so long ago. I won't die. Promise. Luffy didn't promise him back, but he said he would be king. Ace ignores the part about or die trying, and clings to the hope that Luffy will live. He leaves Alabasta with bloody roses and plum tree flowers and sand crushed underneath his shoes. He doesn't talk about it. Chapter 9, Hannah. Robin's made of flowers, though she has no love in her heart except for the history of the world. They do not choke her lungs but rather stretch out and out and out, wreathing her body in beautiful limbs of mimicry. She has the Hana fruit, has eyes and arms and legs blooming like flowers. Petals blossom in their wake, and people see the flowers in her path from the eye in the back of her head and think cursed. It's useful for pity, sometimes. So few people know what Hanahaki looks like, that Robin could get away with any trick in the book for a place to rest her head for the night. Those times are over, now, if only because she turns to bloody hands rather than bloody petals, but she knows the legends still. Hanahaki, originating first in the latter half of the Grand Line, from an island now under the waves, drowned, by the people who first loved it and were cursed. Still, the flowers bloomed. Life-stealing blossoms, some called them, lily carnations, others, the flowers of breath and life and love. Robin could recite the origins for days, how so many suffered at first by the loves they didn't know, how the language shifted over time, how cases dwindled and rose and fell into legend. She could. But there's no one to listen, until she meets him on an island of death and sees his truth underneath falling stone. Monkey D. Luffy is living history, from the D in his name to the sunny, blood-stained smile on his lips. The flowers he leaves behind are a myriad of colors, nothing like Robin's, and she is a fool for thinking she could have ever faked this desperate love. She meets his truth under crumbling rumble, when he defeats a tyrant made of sand and damns her life in the same breath. Damns it, by saving her while he coughs out blood and sand and petals. Her second sight of him before she learned his truth was when Crocodile sent a hook straight through him, and out came blood and water and vines. In the sand pit they were still there, and if not for the sandstorms you could track his path across the ocean. She wonders if the poison in his lungs killed the plants in there, just a bit. Then again, they are born of ocean hate, so she doubts they will go away that easy. She joins his crew then, afterwards, and watches as his truth, his curse, his desperate plea for love, slowly kills him. His truth is this: he will not stop even for the flowers in his lungs, even as every sea breath feels like needles, even as he looks to the endless horizon. His truth is this: Luffy knows hate, and Luffy knows love, and can't tell the difference between the two when it comes to his own part. His truth, his history, so small compared to hers only 14 years, hurts her, in a way she didn't expect. She tells him she wants to live as the world burns around her, and wonders as Luffy destroys himself to save her and everyone else again, if he's so reckless because he wants something else to take him before the ocean's hatred. Does. Chapter 10, Osiers. Frankie saw the Pirate King once, in the distance. It was a quiet thing, a hidden moment that he probably wasn't supposed to see. He had been 10, maybe, or younger, cast off by his parents last month, ex-parents really, and he hated pirates then. Like his ex-parents. Ugh. But Gold Roger, he wasn't the Pirate King yet, not when Frankie saw him, but he was, without a doubt, a pirate. The captain's coat and loud laugh, the joyous grin and billowing shirt, the crew, and the magnificent ship being built behind him, Frankie could not help but be in awe. Roger was a living legend before his title even made its way onto the newspapers, and Frankie was not one, not yet. He would be, in a quarter century or so, but not then. Then, Frankie was small, and Roger was like the sea walking. He followed Roger for a bit as the man explored Scrap Isle, watching as Roger's first mate watched Roger watch the sea. It was odd, seeing a pirate on land, but it was fun, in a way. Like a secret, like something Frankie shouldn't be allowed to see. Fun. Until the future king of the pirates started choking on white daisies, and nearly collapsed there in the street. Frankie knew the stories, and he knew the truth, all those years later, when the Pirate King started an era and died in the same lack of breath. The Pirate King died because of 2 blades and the force of the government, but only because the Hanahaki didn't get him first. Frankie has always wondered who did not love the Pirate King back. Looking at Luffy, sitting on Frankie's shoulder ever so slightly. Breathless, a single petal stuck to his cheek as he stares out at the horizon, Frankie thinks he knows. Frankie can fix anything, but he can't fix this. Only give Luffy plenty of opportunities to hide in his workshop when everyone else's worrying gets too much, and he just needs to cough and cough and cough before falling asleep behind Frankie's back. He keeps a blanket down there, now, and some juice in the cola fridge, just in case Luffy needs something to drink while he's resting. A broom rests in the corner, ready to sweep up osiers and ash mountains once Frankie's captain's eyes close in restless sleep at last. Frankie can't fix this, can't fix Luffy's love. Not that he thinks he could ever want to, but he can provide shelter. It's what a shipwright does, after all, and Frankie is Luffy's shipwright. No matter how many petals he has to brush out of his workspace, he'll be the shelter. Chapter 11, Lily. Brook. There is a question rolling of Luffy's lips that Brook perhaps should have expected. Brook is Bones after all, old Bones twice lived, and his captain's sunshine smile has splashes of red on it when he looks to the horizon. Yes, it should not have been a surprise. Still, who would not be surprised when your captain, young and bold and bright, asks, Brook, what's it like to die? It's like Brook's heart stops beating for the second time when he hears that phrase, that damned question. It's them, alone, Luffy on the figurehead and Brook behind him, the ever-watchful Zoro making sure Luffy did not drown for long, resting a short ways away. It makes sense that Luffy would ask him here, when the sun is setting into the next life. Brook doesn't know what to say, only hums a gentle melody, a sailor's resting song. Luffy shifts his head just so, a single white lily falling from his lips, and a skeletal mouth moves without its soul's say-so. I suppose, it is a little bit like coming home, he says, soft and simple and wondrous, trying to recall the brief moments before his devil fruit stole him back from paradise. A welcoming, different for every person. A soft sigh, and Brook can't tell if it's from him or his captain. He's never talked about death before, not like this and not with anyone living. What experiences he gets from this crew? He wishes, just a bit, that he didn't have to. I heard a melody there, and Brook's soft humming in between words, the strings stirred into harmony on his violin. It all changes, just a bit, to the grasping lullaby Brook heard something like death sing to him once. It was beautiful. The waves crash softly against the bow of the ship. It's different for everyone. Luffy asks, just as soft. Aha, music is my treasure, the songs I shared with my old crew and that I now share here. Not everyone values it as I do, so why would it be that way afterwards for them? Why would their treasures not await them there? Luffy hums, an offbeat repetition of Brook's death song, and closes his eyes. I hope the sea is waiting for me, then. Brook's captain says hopefully, as if each word and implication is not another nail in Brook's coffin. That would be nice. Brook met Luffy when no flowers stained his lips and excitement urged him onward. 10 minutes later, with the finest meal Brook had ever eaten, his captain had broken off to exhale 8 mossy rosebuds from his throat. Luffy loves, endlessly, yet the one endless horizon for a pirate hates him. A tragedy, it is, truly. Brook nods and agrees. It would be nice, Captain. A pirate's heaven, yo-ho-ho-ho. Luffy smiles and picks 6 petals from the back of his mouth, and Brook tries to feel as if the world isn't tearing itself apart in grief. Brook doesn't know if he truly died, if he truly went to the afterlife. If he did, he would have thought his captain, his first captain, Yorkie, would have been waiting for him there. Instead, it was more like a dream than a death. Brook can't promise his captain that the sea will ever love him again. It hurts, far more than it should. Chapter 12, American Marigolds, Luffy and Rayleigh 2 years, Rayleigh tells him on that island where everything is bloody, you have to wait 2 years. Raleigh, Luffy replies, Marigold sticking to his hands, his face, his feet, his dash, chest, pain, so much pain. I don't have 2 years. He doesn't. He knows this, that his life has always been an hourglass of ticking time left, and he's made his peace with it. Eva told him the hormones would take away some of the precious time he had left, and the doctor dude had told him the same. Chopper already scolded him for his gears that he used so many times in that war. It didn't matter. Luffy could not regret trying to save. Don't think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it. Raleigh looks at him with an apprizing eye, and suddenly Luffy remembers Buggy's words about flowers and pirate kings. Then, Raleigh says, finality in his tone, your crew dies at Sabayati. And, really, the choice is simple in the end. Luffy's never much cared about his own life. He's always loved others more than he loved himself. He and Ace were similar, like that. Chapter 13, Cranberry Flowers. Lala had performed the procedure before, mostly on unwilling victims. It was relatively easy. Remove the plants from the lungs and the tendrils of vines that creeped through the blood. Then, only capable with the opope fruit, remove what counted as love in the human body, or non-human body. It isn't a visible thing, that last one, but it is part of the powers Law possesses. Side effects include losing all ability to love, and in some cases, feel emotion. Now, looking at Monkey D. Luffy, laying down and bleeding out on his operating table. Law debates doing the procedure. Straw Hat wouldn't care, afterwards, any love he had for whatever it was shriveling up, but Law remembers. Law remembers the way Straw Hat punched a man in a god's robes and spit up blood on the white fabric afterwards. Remembers the way he did not care, even as he stumbled fighting with Law and Eustace. Remembers the way Straw Hat looked to the sea and didn't look back, and remembers how tiny Straw Hat is, small and 14, the youngest supernova, and pirate captain, really, by far. Straw Hat set sail for a reason. Law removes the flowers, a brief respite for the young captain, easier to operate without them for Law, and leaves Luffy's love alone. Jim shakes him, afterwards. When Straw Hat is unconscious by Jim's side and his breath lets little petals escape. Why didn't you? Jim asks, pained, red on his fingertips from Straw Hat's wounds. Why didn't you save him? Law smirks. I did. Jim growls. You know what I mean. He hums then, twisting Kikoku in his grasp. We're pirates, Jim. We love the sea, no matter who we are. If we don't feel emotion, like joy, or anger, or victory, or grief. If we don't love, then why do we set sail? If pirates didn't love the sea, love their dream, love their crew, then why were they pirates? Jim doesn't get it, but with the way Straw Hat grips his robe even unconscious, he will soon. At Amazon Lily, Straw Hat does not ask Law to remove the pain, to remove the love he feels for his brother. That tears at him, it wasn't supposed to be him, or to remove Straw Hat's love for the ocean, the sea. Instead, he clings tighter to the unbridled affection in his chest and coughs up bouquets and cranberry flowers and wreaths of roses. Law clears Straw Hat's body of flowers once more and leaves Amazon Lily, a smirk lacing his lips as even now, he watches Straw Hat draw nearer and nearer to the water. After all, he understands dying for those you love. Chapter 14, Narcissus, Sanji and Luffy. It's quiet in the galley at night. The waves are gentle outside, the dim light of the lamp casts a soothing orange over everything, and the most rambunctious of their crew are asleep in their bunks. Often, it is only Sanji in the kitchen at night, finishing up meal prep for tomorrow and smoking away his troubles. Not tonight. Tonight, as Sanji finishes putting away pots and pans from this night's dinner, barefoot feet pad their way into the kitchen, soft and simple. There's only one person who walks like that, is that light, with that lack of grace, and walks barefoot on Mary's splintering boards. Luffy, Sanji sighs, putting the dish he was holding down. No more meat. Rationing, do you know that word? Rationing. But Luffy isn't yelling. Instead, he slumps into the space between Sanji's shoulder blades, barely even reaching, and wraps his arms around Sanji. His head shakes a no into Sanji's back as Sanji carefully freezes, and Sanji suddenly realizes what this is about. Luffy. He asks, softer. Are you okay? Another shake of the head, and Sanji turns around, to capture Luffy in his own arms. His hat isn't on, instead resting behind his back, and Sanji is careful to avoid hitting it as he pulls Luffy closer. A moment more passes, Luffy sinking into Sanji's arms. No red stains his dress shirt, so Sanji takes it as a good sign. Luffy. Sanji prompts again, carefully when there is no response. Luffy hums and mutters something Sanji can't quite hear, before he finally lifts his head out of Sanji's shirt. Chopper said. To go to you if I feel too dizzy. He was right. Chopper is their newest member, the youngest after Luffy, yet he's the only one of them who can do anything about the death growing in Luffy's lungs. And even then it isn't much. For Hanahaki, the treatments are removal via opope fruit, requited love or, only working to hold it off, keeping away the source of hate. For a pirate, it's all impossible. Chopper tries anyway, and Luffy listens to him. Sanji and Chopper collaborate on meals, the crew makes Luffy rest, everyone making sure that Luffy will live just one more hour. Sanji's part is food. All right. Go sit down, I'll bring something over. Luffy nods again, reluctant to leave Sanji's warmth but pulling away, and goes to slouch at the table. Sanji turns and laments his clean kitchen for only a second before getting out the things he needs for a quick meal. In 5 minutes of quick yet careful preparation, Sanji is done. He sets a meal down before Luffy, meat that should have been rationed and a glass or two of orange juice, and nods at his captain. Something to refresh him, give him precious vitamins and minerals that his body loses each time he coughs, something to get rid of the dizziness and lightheadedness, something to help calm his captain. Luffy wastes no time in devouring the meal, and it is then, looking at him, that Sanji realizes his captain is the most selfish person Sanji has ever met. He scarfs down meal after meal, offers his endless love to his friends, protects them, saves his crew, and is the best captain Sanji could ask for. Yet, in the same breath, Luffy is 14 and without his entire life ahead of him. Luffy takes hearts and souls and dreams, and offers only bloody smiles and flowers in return. It hurts that Luffy doesn't seem to take care of himself except in quiet moments like this. Sanji thinks back to the island before, where Luffy climbed up a mountain and ground his fingers and toes down to the bone, while Sanji was as useless as a sack of bricks. Where Luffy defeated a tyrant as the cold stole breath away from him, and hacked up cherry blossoms as he made them fall from the sky. Luffy came away bloody and red and hurt. Another injury that he brushed off, another smile laced with pain that he didn't acknowledge. Another wound that could have killed their already dying captain. And Luffy doesn't care. Doesn't care that with every breath of sea air, every dip in the ocean, every cough, and every battle, he's throwing a bit of his life away, bit by bit. Soon, their captain is going to die because of his own selfish love, and there is nothing Sanji can do about. Luffy, selfishly selfless. He always was confusing. Yet, as Luffy leans into Sanji's side, meal finished, humming happily, Sanji cannot blame him. Luffy said he wanted to be Pirate King, and Sanji knows he will be, that Luffy will steal that dream for himself and his crew, and every other hopeful king will simply have to let their dream die. A selfish dream at his center. King or dead, and Sanji won't believe there's any other option than king. Being selfish is just who Luffy is. Hey, better now, Sanji says, lowly, to the boy, leaning into his side. Less dizzy. Luffy nods, sleepily. And the headache is gone too. He hadn't mentioned that before. Sanji makes a note to tell Chopper in the back of his mind. Sanji hums again. Good. He moves to get up, to clean up his kitchen again, but arms around his waist stop him from moving far. Luffy, I need to clean up. He growls, but when he turns Luffy is fast asleep, snoring. Already without any blood lining his lips. Sanji sighs, and slips back into his seat beside his captain, accepting his fate as pillow for the night. Where's the moss head when you need him, he thinks, brushing hair out of Luffy's face and moving his hat to the side. He's the usual napping partner, only thing he's good for, really. He snorts at his own joke before lighting cigarette. Smoke plumes into the air as Sanji lets his eyes fall shut. Luffy is a familiar comfort, wrapped around him and head slipping to Sanji's lap, and sleep pulls heavy at Sanji's limbs. When Luffy coughs, twice, Sanji rubs his back in comfort, ignoring the petals covering his shoes. Soon Sanji snuffs out his smoke and falls into oblivion as well, dreaming of a day when Luffy is a king without blood on his lips. When Sanji wakes, Luffy is still there, quiet and asleep. Blood lines his lips and the bandages around his fingers have come loose in the night, but there's a smile on Luffy's face. Sanji picks narcissus blossoms and lorsteins off of his clothes, shakes his head. Selfish bastard, he says, smiling, and does not allow himself to think of death. Chapter 15, Helenium. Sabo, we had though he would die first, Sabo says to the quiet Luffy, I mean. He doesn't have to specify who he is. By the way, Sabo's eyes trail along the X on Luffy's chest. The rest of the crew, squashed in this small, Dressrosa building, know exactly who he is. Ace was stupid about life, but he wasn't actively dying or trying to die. At least he would live until he found answers. And I didn't have any reason to die, and I had my dream and people I wanted to spite. We always thought it would be Luffy. Luffy, the crybaby. Luffy, the littlest brother. Luffy, the weakling. Luffy, with flowers growing inside his chest, who choked on heleniums when Sabo first met him. Luffy, who breathed in sea air and breathed out flowers. Luffy, who loved so much it hurt. Sabo tilts his head back then, conscious of all the eyes around him. Each Straw Hat stares at him pensively, so much older than him, most of them, but still learning. They all loved his baby brother though. Sabo was thankful. Funny, Sabo's voice catches oddly. How Luffy is the only one who didn't. A part of Sabo died in that fire. To Luffy and Ace, he really was dead. And Ace, there's fire and magma and hell. Sabo swallows the fruit, the will of his brother, and knows that it is only possible because his beloved brother who he never got to see free is 6 feet under the ground and cold. Ace is dead. He's always been surprising like that. Luffy lives without regrets. He has to, if he wants to achieve his dream. Sabo has 2 regrets, and is glad he has a new dream now. Zoro, in the corner, nods in agreement as the rest of the crew chuckle. They don't seem alarmed at Sabo's shaky words, or the way he's slowly carting a hand through Luffy's hair, when only an hour ago he had crushed skulls with it. Stupid, the rest of the world would call the Straw Hats. Knowing, Sabo calls them, because they understand death just like he does, and they understand Luffy. Luffy coughs. Then, briefly, flowers and blood spill past his lips, so much more than he did before, 7 and fresh flowers in his lungs. Sabo hesitates. His crew doesn't. Usopp tilts Luffy onto his side with just one hand, a hand sprouts to rub circles into Luffy's back, and Trafalgar Law mutters a quick room and suddenly flowers fall in the trash can beside the bed. Familiar motions, each one laden with care. He won't die, Zoro says from the wall, the ever-faithful first mate. We won't let him. Ace had promised Luffy he wouldn't die. Sabo doesn't think this is any different. And yet, he looks around at this crew, who look at their captain, younger than all of them by at least 3 years, with nothing but devotion and love and loyalty, and thinks maybe he can place some trust in them. Just a little. A kid like him makes a big brother worry. Take care of him for me, okay? The Straw Hats nod, his brother shifts in his bed, and Sabo leaves, ignoring the flowers stuck on his coat. Luffy won't die. His crew wouldn't let him, after how many times he made them live. Hopefully it's enough. King or dead, as they say. King or dead. Chapter 16, Asphodel. Mary is a ship, and so Mary is faithful. She loves her crew, loves the waves, and loves the way her helm is always facing the horizon. She is a Straw Hat, and she will never abandon her crew by choice. She has no choice now, when her planks are breaking and her hull is shattering, when destruction takes her away bit by bit. Her spirit is strong, no Straw Hat would ever falter, but her body is weak. Her captain, young, bloody, and hers, makes the right decision. She's glad, at first. No matter how bad she wants to, she can't carry them forward. She is only a lamb, meant for paradise and gentle waters. The waves whisper about lightning islands and sea kings who swallow flightless ships, and Mary knows she cannot compete and keep her crew safe. Her captain makes the right decision to leave her behind at Water 7. No one likes it. Mary is a lamb, and lambs are made for blood. Her figurehead, her captain's beloved special seat, is stained with red from when her captain sits there so peacefully. Last night, when he sat and made this decision, he was there with her. Blood drips down Mary's face along with white windflower petals. They feel like tears, somehow, and Mary knows it will never come out of her wooden skin. Her captain is breaking on the inside. Everyone is. Yet Usopp, her beloved Usopp, who cares for her so much, who was the first to paint her sails and sit on her deck to embrace the sun, who stuck with her and encourages her and loves her, Usopp, is angry. He's not brave, not yet, and so he hides. Mary wishes she could make him believe that he's brave enough to face this, that he's strong, that he's needed. It wouldn't do anything. He needs to learn for himself. Their captain would never abandon him. He lashes out. Luffy lashes back. Both of them cough into the bloody ground of her galley, and Usopp leaves. Luffy, you're going to be the pirate king, right? Usopp said, blood dripping from his lips like a poor mimicry of Luffy. I don't have any high ambitions for myself. Looking back, when I first set out to sea, you guys just invited me on your ship. That's our only connection. There's no sense in traveling together when we have completely different views. He was hurtful. Wrong. Mary knew he wanted to be a brave warrior of the sea. But then, I'm not here to die like you are, Luffy. This sea's not going to be my grave. I'm too cowardly for that. I'm quitting this crew. The truth hurt. There's a battle in 2 hours. Her captain lies in her hull, coughing up asphodels in his hammock. He knows the truth that Mary knows, but that just means it's too late. The rest of her crew breaks. Mary breaks. Her captain breaks. She hates this. But she can't stop it. She can only cry. Usopp does not hesitate when the battles comes. Mary knew he wouldn't. Usopp is smart, and knows Luffy is stronger than him in terms of strength. He turns to tricks, dirty tricks, tricks fit for a pirate. Smoke and eggs and fire. Things that cut even Luffy. Then, dangerously, things that Luffy breathes in and can't breathe out, pepper spray and cases, things that make flowers choke out of Luffy's throat, even in the middle of a fight. The one thing that would bring him down. Luffy lands just one blow, in the end, but it's enough. It's over. The outcome everyone knew was coming. Mary cries as Luffy slumps to his knees, cries as blood covers the ground, cries as Luffy limps his way back to the ship and barely breathes out. It's heavy, barely breathes at all. Her crew leaves her that night, never to return, and all that's left of her captain is the flowers around her flag and the blood on her floorboards. Her captain made the right decision. She just wished it didn't turn out like this. Asphodels and windflowers wisp from her deck in the night air, and as Usopp's tears fall to her deck, Mary knows she has abandoned her crew. Chapter 17, Flower Crown. Usopp is the first to do it, surprisingly. Or maybe, it's unsurprising given his knack for creativity. He's on deck, taking up flower brushing duty that day, sweeping off piles of petals that find their ways into the corner of Mary's cracks, when he stumbles upon an idea. The petals are cleaner than usual, signifying a good day for their captain. Less blood and more petals was always good. It'd be better if there were none, but Luffy was impossible like that. This means, however, that Usopp can do things with them, without dark thoughts creeping in. Usopp abandons his broom and sits down before a pile, ready to weave. It is an hour later when he figures out how to make a crown without long stems to braid with. He used to do this before, with Kaya on hillsides on better days, but those were only with daisies. Now, he weaves crowns of celandines and cosmoses, cowslips and hyacinths, jasmines and azaleas and bougainvilleas. His captain was happy today, and as Usopp hums beneath his breath, hands working at a steady pace over the quiet of the sea, he is happy too. With a final twist of a petal, a flower crown emerges of happy yellow and pinks and whites, with only a little bit of dried red at the edges. It's good, for a first try. Usopp puts it on his head, tentatively, and looks in the mirror he has stored in his bag for blinding attacks. It settles gently over his head, ruffled by the breeze but not blowing away, and Usopp is proud. A flower crown, fit for a king. Usopp's eyes flit to where Luffy is sitting on the figurehead, and knows whose head will next be crowned with flowers. Alas, he has no more flowers right now. Maybe there are some, looking for more. Usopp startles at the voice, whipping around. Nami? Robin. There she is, their navigator, taking a break from the helm and holding a pile of flowers, some bloody, and some not. Next to her, Robin holds more, as well, with a bowl of water, red drifting through it and dried petals in several more of her hands. Foo. Robin chuckles, her eyes lighting up as Usopp settles back down. We thought we could lend a hand to your endeavors, Longnose. A hand pops up to adjust the crown on Usopp's head, and something in his shoulders relaxes at that. He smiles, sitting back down and gesturing for the others to do so. They have flower crowns to weave before their captain turns from that endless horizon, and Usopp knows he'll want everyone to have one. Their captain is selfish like that, coughing up blood and flowers to share with his crew. It's an odd kind of selfish, but Usopp loves him anyway. Zoro drifts over at some point, nodding to them, then going to sleep by the figurehead, the ever-watchful first mate. Sanji appears with snacks and hands, able to weave flowers faster than the rest of them once Usopp shows him how. Chopper weaves celandines and cosmoses and roses with a surgeon's precision, and soon, each of them is wearing a flower crown adorned with small bits of blood on their heads. A bit morbid, chuckles Robin, but there is glee on her face, softly hidden, as she accepts a pink and purple blossoming crown. Our captain, giving us his blood to wear, Robin, whines Chopper next to her, pulling at her pant legs. I washed them the best I could. Petals tear very easily. Sanji places a hand on his head, patting it twice. And you did good, Chopper. There's a lot less than when we started. You bastard? That doesn't make me happy. But he's right. The flowers float gently in their hair, even stained with remnants of blood. They are beautiful, and the puddles Luffy chokes up aren't there, not anymore. Everyone has a smile on their face, and Usopp is proud of what he made out of this death omen. Now, all that's left is to give one to Luffy. A crown, fit for a king. One created wholly by him, shaped by his friend's hands. Usopp thinks he would be more excited by the poeticness of it if he'd thought Luffy would have cared. His captain has time for action and stories and world-turning phrases. Not some poetry Usopp doesn't care about. Besides, this crown, laden with every flower near perfect condition they could find, clean and beautiful, fit to the brim and wide enough to fit around Luffy's hat like a true crown, is perfect. And, shit. Zoro cries from the bow, and then there is splashing and coughing and calling before their captain is pulled up on deck. 30 seconds, Usopp thinks, belatedly, as Luffy is wrapped in towels and scolded with a single glare by a soaking wet Zoro. Faster save time than before. Good. It doesn't take long for Luffy to start coughing, Zoro rubbing gentle circles on his back as buttercups fall to the deck. But, it also doesn't take long for him to look up, coughing fit over, and see his crew, and their lovely, lovely crowns made by their captain's blood. Luffy's eyes grow wide and there is joy there, unmistakable joy as he laughs. Shishishi, you guys look great. Can I have one? He doesn't even finish his question before Zoro pushes his hat over his eyes and Nami places the crown on Luffy's hat. Of course, Captain, she says, smiling, terribly fond of this brat, and Usopp wonders if his voice gets like that when he talks to Luffy sometimes. Luffy laughs, again, pushing his hat up and looking at all of them with such love it hurts. He doesn't even look at the crown, trusting his crew made it beautiful for him, and turns to the pile of flowers they still have left, lying on the ground, and the ones he just coughed up. I want to make one too, he says, and it's not an order but his crew treats it as one. For Mary. Captain. They chorus, settling down around him. Mary deserves one, their beloved lambship. She'll look beautiful decorated in blossoms instead of blood, Usopp thinks. Together, their crew cleans and weaves and shapes flowers into a crown big enough for their ship, some hands helping, everyone besides and others not. Zoro, sleeping, and Luffy. There is laughter and cheer. Even when Luffy breaks to cough and slumps into Usopp's side for the briefest of moments. They have dinner, out there, weaving a crown of flowers, before she is finally finished. Beautiful, bloody, and a crown fit for a king. When Luffy does the honors of placing it on Mary's head, a king crowning a lamb, Usopp knows Mary is the prettiest ship of them all. Later that night, when Luffy is slumped into Usopp's side during the night watch, Luffy interrupted. Usopp learns a secret. My brothers and I used to make flower crowns, Luffy mumbles, uncharacteristically quiet and half asleep. Makino showed us how. Yeah. Usopp prompts as he adjusts the blanket covering them. Brothers? Usopp only knew Ace but he didn't know Ace till he saved all their asses. It's no wonder Luffy would have more terrifying family. MMHM. It was nice. Thanks for doing it again. Usopp. You're the best. Luffy's words slur before dropping off entirely, a smile still on his face as he huddles up next to Usopp. The flower crown is still on his hat, and Usopp adjusts it a little, ever so slightly. You're welcome, Captain. He says, dropping his head to rest atop Luffy's. You're welcome. He doesn't whisper to Luffy that he'd follow him to the ends of the earth if he could, if he wasn't such a coward, but he thinks Luffy knows that anyway. His captain is great like that. Always. Chapter 18, Dianthus. Hancock loves Luffy, with the love of a hurricane, a tyrant, an empress. It's indisputable, undeniable, passionate, and bright and there. Luffy says he doesn't love her back. Doesn't turn to stone when he looks at her beauty and doesn't falter when she looks at him. Yet, no flowers bloom in Hancock's lungs. No vines choke her throat and no dianthuses grip her chest in sickness. She is beautiful, unbloodied, and perfect still. She loves Luffy entirely and completely, and she has no Hanahaki, unlike her love. This means, of course, that Luffy loves her back, doesn't it? This is what Hancock tells herself when Luffy is bandaged and weeping and flowering before her, and what she tells herself when Luffy isn't stone or falling at her feet. Love, she thinks, he loves me. Granny Nyan shakes her head as Hancock fawns over Luffy who is choking on meat and blossoms before her. Stupid girl, stupid empress who didn't understand her own emotions. The feeling was not love. The feeling was friendship, but Hancock had never experienced it before, and jumped to the only obvious conclusion. Romantic love. Sigh. Luffy loves Hancock, just as completely as she loves him, in the way that he loves all his friends and the ocean itself. Luffy knows friendship. This is friendship, the way Hancock went to impel down, and the way Hancock rubbed his back when he choked on Lily's, and the way she went to war for him. It's what he would do, for any one of his friends, his crew, his family. So of course, it's friendship. That's all for today. See you again in part 2 and don't forget to subscribe the channel.